Melissa S. Walker is the Healing Arts Program Coordinator at the National Intrepid Center of Excellence, Walter Reed, Bethesda, Maryland, US, and lead art therapist for NEA Creative Forces. Dedicated to treating military service members with traumatic brain injury and associated psychological health conditions by developing the Healing Arts Program at the Center for Excellence. To bring us up to speed on art psychotherapy, please welcome Melissa S. Walker.
Hi, I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so much for the Road Home for hosting me. So I am the Healing Arts Program Coordinator at the National Intrepid Center of Excellence at Walter Reed in Bethesda, Maryland, but currently I'm detailed about 80% of the time to the National Endowment for the Arts. And if you ask me how many times has a DoD employee been detailed to an arts federal agency, the answer is never, no, I'm the first one. So it's been unprecedented and really exciting to see the military and the arts come together as one. So Creative Forces is an initiative of the National Endowment for the Arts in partnership with the U.S. Departments of Defense and Veterans Affairs and state and local arts agencies. We serve the needs of military patients and veterans with traumatic brain injury and associated psychological health conditions, as well as their families and caregivers. And this, of course, includes post-traumatic stress, parentheses, disorder. You obviously can't read this very well, but I just wanted to share as we go into this presentation that we are standardized professions. Creative arts therapies are an umbrella term for music therapy, art therapy, dance movement therapy, poetry therapy, psychodrama, and drama therapy. And there are various educational and credentialing standards for each. I am an art therapist, so I'm going to speak mainly to art therapy today. But we use art and art making as a way to communicate with our patients, and then we verbally process the meaning behind the art that has been created. And you can see maybe up there that the art therapy were master's level clinicians, and you'll hear more about that in a moment. If you want to find this diagram, it's found in NICoE, or the National Organization for Arts in Health, their white paper on the arts, health, and well-being in America. It's also a great white paper for differentiating the difference between clinical art therapy and arts engagement in medical settings or healthcare settings that isn't necessarily clinical. So this is our integrative care model that is used throughout the majority of the Creative Forces sites, mostly in the DoD, but in some of the VA sites as well. And you can see that there's this vast array of providers that are working around the patient. It's patient-centered, and they really are, we are most focused on them. You can see the family is there as well. I'll talk a moment about the NICoE layout, but in the fourth week of care, the family is invited into sessions with us. And then you can see creative arts therapists are at the core member of the team, and we are a need to have, not a nice to have. So we are part of all of those interdisciplinary team meetings, and we provide our insights to the team members in those meetings. This is a rendering of the Niko Facility by yours truly, and it's designed to be a healing environment. So most of the walls are curved. There's lovely music in the background. Ian Drayton has been there, Churchill Fellow, and then luckily brought me back over here. But it's really nice for them to walk through the doors and immediately feel comforted by the environment. And the NICoE is used for the treatment and the research, as I've mentioned, of TBI and associated psychological health conditions. And we have both an intensive outpatient format that's 4 weeks long, where service members come from all over the US and stay in a Fisher House, so I know we've got Tish here, and then go through the program, seeing all those providers that I showed you that was part of the wheel. And then we have a longitudinal outpatient format as well. And so in that program, in the IOP program, they have over 130 care provider encounters, and that would take probably about 1.5 years in the conventional military outpatient setting. So it's extremely immersive, and like I said, they feel very cared for. So at the NICoE, we employ at the moment art therapy, music therapy, dance movement therapy, therapeutic and creative writing. These are two examples of some of the main and the standardized directives that we use with the service members as they move through the art therapy program. The masks are made in the first week in a group art therapy session, and in the fourth week, they're invited to create montage paintings. Now, I mentioned earlier that it's a need to have, not a nice to have, so when I say standard of care, they're all going to be scheduled to engage in the creative arts therapies. It's not referral based in the IOP. The benefit of that is a lot of these men and women don't realize that it's something that would benefit them until they walk through the doors, until they form the rapport with the therapists and realize they're safe to engage. Now, if I had a picture of the studio, you would see that all of the artwork is lining the walls. That also invites them to create, and many of them recognize some of the same symbolism that they would depict, or they recognize their military unit or occupation being depicted in the artwork. And then they know their peers have been through, and they feel even more safe to engage. On the left, you see a mask that is created by a service member with a Bronze Star for his action overseas. You can actually move that outer part of the mask, and on the inside is what he describes as the kind of the horrors of war, the internal part that's impacted him. So you've got the shiny patriotism on the outside, and then the realities of it on the inside. On the right, you see a service member has depicted how he has improved throughout care. So this is how he felt prior to coming through the NICoE, the bent over dark shadow, the atmosphere is different, and then he walks through the door, which is symbolized, is meant to symbolize the NICoE, and then he's feeling upright and proud and is able to move forward from there. We're of course very interested in the next canvas after they leave, and so in a moment I'll talk about how we make sure once they leave we're able to refer them back to further care. Now, we use the art therapy to enable them to express the invisible wounds of war. A lot of leadership was even pretty impressed and surprised that the service members were responding so positively to this. And we started to question why. And if you look at research surrounding trauma and post-traumatic stress, they're seeing a shutdown in the Broca, or the verbal area of the brain, the speech-language area of the brain. This is actually a neuroimaging scan from the MEG, a magnetoencephalography, and it's neuroimaging that captures the electrical patterns of the brain by measuring magnetic fields created by the brain at rest. In the left hemisphere in the front, you see that dark blue region. That's reduced alpha band activity, and in this particular service member, he had trouble verbalizing his experiences. I think service members put it best in their own words, and this particular service member, the first question that was asked of him was, what stood out to you while you were at the NICoE?
It allowed me to put 23 years of PTSD and TBI stuff together in one place that it's never happened before. Sorry. No one was able to figure it out because the way conventional medicine works in the Navy, the Army, you see this guy, you go see this guy, you go see this guy. They never talk. This is where this is awesome, because you come here, they talk every day. So this person talks, this person talks. They have notes. So they send me to art therapy, and I go in there and they give me a mask, and you sort of just zone out into the mask. You zone out into the drawing. And for me, it just released the block. So I was able to do it. And then when I looked at it after 2 days, I was like, holy crap, here's the picture, here's the key, here's the puzzle. And then from there, it just soared. I mean, from there, my treatment just went, out of sight, because they were like, Kurt, explain this. And for the first time in 23 years, I could actually talk about stuff openly to like anybody. I could talk to you about it right now if I wanted to, because it unlocked it. It's just amazing.
So we affectionately call his mask the Da Vinci Code mask. If you were to look at it, there's no way an outsider could interpret it, or you would misinterpret it. He had symbols for every little thing going on in his life, everything bothering him, things he was worried about surrounding his children growing up, and he actually took that mask with him, took it home, and I think he's used it in some of his treatment moving forward, which is good to hear. So we've had around or over 2,000 masks made at the NICoE since 2010. And we have multi-sites now, which I'll talk about later. So if you think about the other creative arts therapists who are using this directive, that number grows exponentially. We took about 400 of them and categorized them for theme using a grounded theory approach. And we found a construct surrounding identity, and we've heard a lot about identity today and why that's so important. It's part of the reason why I chose to incorporate mask making and standardize it as part of the program, because these men and women need an opportunity or a way to express how they're feeling about changes in identity after injury and who they're going to be moving forward as they recover. And I will show you the identity construct now. Kind of micro to macro, and it can overlap as well. But you see self as an individual, in relationships, in community, in society, and in and over time. I can go, by the way, I'm going to tell you in a moment because I see people trying to take pictures. All of this has been published and is open access, and I'll show you where you can find it. So sorry if I'm moving too quickly, but I don't want to run out of time. So these are some examples of each one of those themes, and I don't have time to run through each one, but you can see some of the psychological injury, the wound, the physical injury, some of the community that is being symbolized there, and some more existential and moral imagery as well, injury, sorry. We then took the themes that we found in the masks and we correlated it to their incoming PTSD and generalized anxiety scores. And we found some pretty powerful correlations between, for instance, if you had higher PTSD, you were more prone to depict psychological injury. The benefit of that is that means to us that if they had something they needed to get out, they're getting it out using this directive. But what we found most interesting and what we're kind of making sure that we weave into everything that we do moving forward is that if they depicted a strong sense of community, specifically within the military unit or team, as long as it wasn't fragmented, that ended up being a protective factor for post-traumatic stress and anxiety. Now we took what began at the NICoE, and through the Creative Forces Initiative and congressional funding, we were able to replicate it in 11 different sites across the US. 2 of these sites are actually telehealth pilots, so we're also trying to reach veterans in rural areas. And I think in the next year, we'll be expanding into 6 more locations. And so now we're 24 creative arts therapists strong. And we've had close to 50,000 patient encounters over the past 3 years. And we're looking forward to seeing that number just continue to increase. 50 seconds. So this is how we think that, once you've reached the service member, obviously there's a ripple effect that works its way out into the family, the military community, then the civilian community, and then society. And so it's really a broad impact. And because of this, we want to make sure that we're thinking about taking what we're learning and lending that knowledge to the civilian community and other populations. There's a great need for this, and so we've begun to think more about more traumatized populations within the military communities, such as, like I said, family, but family not only in the clinical setting. Heidi talked yesterday about how oftentimes the family has to come through the door with the service member, but also in the community as more of a kind of psychoeducational arts intervention. And then we're also looking into first responders and natural disaster, and unfortunately this day and age, not so natural disaster, and so hopefully we'll see that on the horizon. These are some of the research findings. We had a research director who went into all the manuscripts that have been published, over 14 now across the disciplines, and she pulled out the main themes that she was seeing in each, and there, again, at the bottom, you see reduce isolation and stigma through meaningful interaction with others, improve communication. If you go to arts.gov/creative forces and the research tab, there is a Creative Forces research inventory, and all of that we've published is listed there, as well as current and ongoing research studies. So you can pull those up, and like I said, they're open access. I'm going to end with one more slide. I want to end on a good note. So this is a story about Christo, and I'm thinking yesterday to Miranda and Ellie's research. We caught him on his way out, about to medically discharge. He came through the NICoE, became engaged in art therapy, and then within the first 3 to 5 years of discharging, started his own glassblowing initiative for fellow veterans. And yesterday I discussed how glassblowing, it's a team a team art-making process. There's an element of danger, fragility, and trust. And so bringing them all together helps with that protective factor, that strong sense of community moving forward. And Chris actually testified in front of Congress recently on behalf of the Creative Arts Therapies for service members, veterans, families, and caregivers. So it's pretty exciting. Thank you.